What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Arrow. Today I want to start by thanking everybody for all the support. I'm up over 100 videos on my channel. I couldn't do this without all of your support, so thank you so much for the likes, the comments, and the subscribes. So today's video, we're going to get into Purifying Flame Occultist Chaos Conversion. Let's go. Purifying Flame is a skill that converts physical damage to fire by nature. We use the Crucible node that gives Purifying Flame fire damage converted to chaos 100%. It also gives us profane ground instead of consecrated ground created by Purifying Flame. This creates a problem, but also gives us a positive, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So now that our Purifying Flame damage is pure chaos, we can scale our chaos damage with things like Wither, Chaos Pen, and we take advantage of a lot of things that increase our elemental damage, but then we ultimately do chaos damage. This build is based around the Void Battery Badge of the Brotherhood setup that I love so much, and I even used a Headhunter in this build. It's been quite some time since I went ahead and used a Headhunter. I don't want to blame chat, but I definitely was persuaded by them to use one. I have some footage in here as well that is non-Headhunter. It was a lot of fun with and without, but the beauty of the Headhunter is you get Fizz's extra damage, you get AoE, you get speed. It really just helps this build a ton. We did some weird things with the defenses. I decided to go for spell block and spell suppression, but not capping either. And ultimately, I feel like it felt pretty good. I know that the default is if you don't get 100% spell suppression, it's not worth having, but I think we ended up getting around 72% if you calculate the lucky roll, as well as 61 spell block meant I just wasn't taking that much spell damage. We have over 80 evade chance and 48 block chance, so not a lot of attacks getting through. But when they do, we have a ridiculous amount of recovery, over 2,000 life per second between our regen and our life leech. And at the end of the day, this build feels really, really good against some of the hardest content in the game. I did not do Ubers, as always. I don't like doing them, but I did, I think, up to wave 29 Simulacrum, Blighted maps, Deep Delve, 100% Deli maps. Did a lot of different content with this build, and it went really, really well. I enjoyed it a lot, and it's something I actually would recommend to somebody who wants to spend a little bit of money and play a self-cast build. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so Purifying Flame. Let's start with the most important item, and that is going to be the shield with this node right here. Purifying Flame creates profane ground instead of consecrated ground. So we'll talk about that real quick. Profane ground gives -10 to all resistances, which includes chaos, and then gives 100% crit chance. So combine that with the profane or the consecrated ground that we get from other sources like Bottled Faith and Zealotry. We actually have both of the grounds at the same time. So a bunch of crit chance, life regen, minus res, really, really strong to get both of these. And then all of our Purifying Flame damage gets converted to chaos damage. So one of the requirements is that we fully convert our Purifying Flame to fire first, which is why we have these gloves that have 50% fire conversion on them. The gem by itself does not convert fully to fire, it just does half. So the rest of the shield isn't super important. We got a little bit of block, and that's really about it. Otherwise, it's a power charge shield. We got spell block, regen, and +1 fire. I got so lucky crafting this. I wanted to get double block on it. I got lucky and hit the regen, and then I reforged fire until I got +1 fire spell. As this is a power charge stacker, we also use a void battery. The nodes on this are not super impressive, just a little bit of crit here. Nothing else really matters. Of course, Badge of the Brotherhood, one of my favorite items in the game. This gives us, this allows us to have equal power charges and frenzy charges. So we just stack a bunch of power charges and we get frenzy charges as well. So we have 10 of each. This guy wants to lowball me. We have 10 of each. We generate our frenzy charges from this chest, which has frenzy charge on hit and spell crit. Additional curse is a very nice chest. Double elevated the suffixes, merged them together, hit fire res. Then I locked the suffixes, reforged caster to get additional curse. The reason we have no life on here is because we use the life mastery for 15% additional life. Other things Badge of the Brotherhood does for us, we get CDR for our travel skills, which means Flame Dash is pretty much up permanently because with 10 charges, you get 100% CDR. We also get 100% effect of elusive, and we get elusive through our boots. These boots seem pretty insane, but they were actually 28 divines. Elevated Tailwind, Elevated Onslaught, Elusive, Move Speed, and Life. The belt, I basically just wanted to make a belt that I could swap out for Headhunter. The idea here is I didn't want to get any resists or anything that was mandatory on the build on the belt, so I could just put the Headhunter on, and then I could take it off and I could do, you know, gameplay showcases and things without it, maybe bosses. So this is basically just strength, dex, and life. And then the abyssal socket is just ES, life, multi. On our gloves, like I said, we have to get 50% conversion. Then it's just spell suppress and cold res. We actually don't get 100% spell suppress. We do a very, very minor investment over here, which we'll get into in the tree. But we go for a spell block and spell suppress. On our rings, chaos damage leached as life is mandatory on this because we had no other way to get leech. So this just fixes some stats and minus mana cost to help our very, very expensive spell. And then we got despair and res on our other curse. Briefly, we'll talk about the amount of ES that we have on Eldritch Battery. 1300 ES seems like a ton. However, because our skill costs 99 mana, you go through that really, really fast, especially when we get some Headhunter buffs up. If we don't get additional ES, Soul Eater, we are chewing through this. So it's all a mana pool for us, and it still is barely enough. The helmet, we got super lucky crafting this. So I got a haste, reservation, efficiency, enchant, and then I merged elevated cold damage, elevated fizz taken as cold, and +1 power charge. I actually hit mana reservation efficiency as a suffix on the craft, on the Awakener. We also hit lightning res, and I slammed on tier 1 regen. Just a crazy, crazy lucky item that like you would probably have to spend hundreds of divines to get. Void batteries poorly rolled. Should probably be divining that. For our flasks, evasion, more evasion, regen, phasing, and spell suppress, all very important stuff. The Bottle of Faith we talked about, this is just a huge amount of damage, and it also helps us have consecrated ground all the time. Bunch of movement speed, and reduced effect of curses on us. For the gems, we have my favorite setup here for a low life build, which is Arrogance, Vitality, and a Herald skill. In this skill, we are using Herald of Ash to help with our clear and give us some more, give us a nice boost to our damage. But this, with the life mastery on the tree, the life reservation mastery on the tree, gets us around 50%. You want to make sure that you're on a petrified blood build, reserving a little bit less than half your life, so you get overleech. In the helmet, we have our auras, haste, brace, petrified blood, and enlighten. We only need to have more than 0 mana because we use Eldritch Battery. Here we have a divine blessing support for zealotry. This is just a big damage button. When you press that, we recharge and have zealotry up for about 20 seconds. In the boots, we have a 4-link wither totem setup. This is just to get as much wither as quickly as possible on bosses. Tempest shield, we use a 21 instead of a divergent. It's only 1% difference for spell block, so not a big deal. And then we have a punishment Arcanist brand curse setup. Punishment gives a bunch of extra damage when enemies are on low life, which is 50%. So by the time our damage is ramped up, enemies are 50% or less anyway. Then this kicks in and we pretty much finish him right off. For Purifying Flame, we get to about level 24. More levels would be good, but there was really no way for us to do it. We'll talk about why I chose some of these gems here in a second. Damage per power charge, obviously that's great. Awaken Added Fire gives us +1 level. Fizzes extra fire, which then also becomes chaos. Intensify is not a damage multiplier while mapping, but it is when you're casting in place. So we have more area damage when we are casting over and over again without moving. But when we're moving between casts, we just have big AoE. Awakened Elemental Focus, again, +1, more LE damage. And we're not inflicting elemental ailments anyway because we convert fully to chaos damage. And then we have Spell Echo. I originally didn't want to use Spell Echo, but a pure damage multiplier was giving us so much damage that we never was actually able to get our Profane Bloom to go off. So the way Profane Bloom works is cursed enemies that you kill have a 50% chance to explode. Now, in order to curse them, you have to hit them and they have to not die. And this build has so much damage per hit that even with Intensify and Spell Echo while mapping, most things get one shot, so there's never any explosions. So I actually don't even know if Profane Bloom is worth taking, maybe going for Unholy Authority, or just spending less on offense might actually be the move for, at least for mapping. It wasn't until you get to like, 10 deli stacks was my Profane Bloom consistently going off in a map, because we simply just do so much damage with each individual hit. Okay, that is it for the gems. Let's talk about the tree. This is a very basic power charge stacking tree. We get the power charges here and here, and then this wheel. We also take Infused on our Anoint. I take Increased Charge Duration because it makes our charges last twice as long. So for things like bosses, we don't have to worry about maintaining charges quite as much. You can take damage per charge here if you want. We get the Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame for Heart of Destruction. We steal that from Elementalist. These are super expensive, but absolutely worth it. They give massive AoE while mapping, and then on single target, you get a bunch more damage. We take a Spell Block here and here, and then we take these 5 points to get Spell Suppression. So between this 13% roll on our gloves and these 5 points, we're actually at 74% Spell Suppression. That's a ton for very, very little investment, and I find that to be super useful. When you combine that with the 61% spell block that we have, we're not taking much spell damage. I actually really enjoyed combining those two things together. It would be similar investment to not take the spell block and to go down here, but the reality is going evasion and block together gives you double layers of avoidance, and then spell block and spell suppression give you double layers of defense against spells. And I found it to be very, very tanky. We are level 98 on this build. Our Watcher's Eye is actually really nice. We have cast speed while affected by Zealotry, evade while affected by Grace, one of my favorite mods in the game, and life recovery rate while affected by Vitality. That includes our regen and our leech. And let me pull this up. It looks like we have 1100 regen and a 983 life leech. So over 2000 life per second coming back between the two. And that means this build can actually do no regen maps too, because we are Eldritch Battery. For our clusters, Unholy Grace, huge damage. Touch of Cruelty is damage. Overwhelming Malice, because we are a chaos crit build. We have permanent uptime of this. We're always critting. So 30% of Fizz's extra cast is just massive. For our mediums, we got some AoE, some life on these nodes here. Assert Dominance is really nice. And then we went for Quick Getaway and Pressure Points for more crit and some move speed. I originally had another medium cluster here, but I had to drop it when I decided to go into Spell Block. I highly recommend looking into going partial spell suppression. It's a lot more powerful than I think people give it credit for. For our Ascendancy, we talked about Profane Bloom not being very good for this build because we do too much damage. I ultimately think if I were to play this again, I would do less damage and I would invest more into defenses and try to make this thing really, really tanky. Probably get more spell block, maybe more spell suppress. Void Beacon is minus chaos res and enemies have no regen, which is really nice. And then Withering Presence, obviously fantastic. Chaos res, more chaos damage, wither, and less damage taken from hindered enemies. And then lastly, Forbidden Power. The AoE is great for us, 60 AoE, 60% increased damage, and +1 power charge. I know, another power charge stacking build from me. All of our jewels are double multi and life. I think we have maybe 4 to 5 of these. Just big damage. So I think that's pretty much it for the build. As far as, I think that's pretty much it. I highly would recommend this build if you are looking for something a little bit off meta that is very, very powerful. Now, I've obviously put a good amount of currency into this build, but here we are at the end of the league. A lot of people have currency they want to throw around and they don't know what to do with it. So if you are looking for that self-cast feel, this build feels like an absolute machine gun. And when you get going, you get your cast speed up, your frenzy charges, you are casting 40 times per second, and it is just, it's a blast. The damage is really good. The survivability is good. If you're looking to like really crush maps, I think I did just about all the bosses that weren't Uber on this, all the invitations, delirious maps, simulacrum, things like that. I don't think I did all 30 waves. I think I did 29, but this is an absolute blast. A lot of fun to play, and there's even more room to grow still. So thank you so much for watching. As always, if you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, a subscribe, or a comment. Let me know down below what you want me to play next. There's still a month left of the league, so I am going to play some more builds before I go into league start testing. If you want to support me, you can check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/AER0__. We have a lot of fun over there, so come check out the stream. I'm streaming full time now, so I appreciate your support. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, take care.